A kind of apocalypse destroyed the entire planet. And one of the greatest mysteries is what caused this destruction. And after a few years, people began to coexist with monsters. And to make matters worse, there are areas of our planet where no one dares to step. That's because extremely powerful bombs were used there. Our protagonist is a detective, and he wants to uncover some of the mysteries surrounding this world. However, he lost his memory, and he feels like he knew something very important. Now, he will do whatever it takes to try to recover his memories. The story begins with a boy lost in the desert, almost dying of thirst. Then, in the distance, he sees a gigantic water tower. It was too good to be true, but before he could reach it, he falls to the ground, very weak. It seemed like that would be his end. And the sand starts to swallow him completely. But like a miracle, someone appears to save him, and pulls him out from the sand dunes. This person had a robotic glove, but that didn't matter, because now he was safe. This story is very interesting, and I'm sure you're going to like it. It's a bit complex, just like the story of the astronaut with the guitar. It was a bit hard to write the script, so go ahead and leave a like and a comment to help the channel. The scene changes to a flower shop. The blonde girl was taking care of her flowers, and although it was extremely rare to get water in the desert, she still took care of her plants. She kept protecting that place alone after the death of her parents. At that moment, someone asks her not to waste water on those little plants. The girl gets mad, telling him not to speak badly about her flowers, and we see that it was the guy who had rescued the boy. He wanted her to give water to the boy, and tells her he found him lying in the desert, almost lifeless. This was Sung, and he immediately takes off his beanie and shakes the sand off. She gets mad, saying that he lives in the back of her house, doesn't even pay rent properly, and was still demanding water. In response, Sung tells the girl it was to save a life, and we see that the boy had leaves on his head. While she shook the watering can, the leaves start turning green again, and then Sung takes the watering can from her hands. And when he goes to drink the water, he realizes it's empty. He starts cursing, saying she didn't leave anything for him. But a few seconds ago, the watering can was full, and even she doesn't understand what happened. At that moment, they hear the voice of the rescued boy, and he had asked where he was. His eyes were green, and his hair looked like it was made of plant leaves. So they go into the flower shop. They were trying to understand why he was lost in the desert, almost dead. She introduces her tenant, whose name is Sung, and her name was Mary. The boy thanks them for saving him, and Sung asks what he's going to give in return. Besides that, they wanted to know his name, and the plant head said his name was 0009. Because of the hair in the name, Sung is sure that he's a hybrid, and a rare one at that. If by any chance they sold him on the market, they could make a lot of money. Then Mary punches him on the head. The plant head doesn't understand what's going on, and starts crying already because he doesn't remember anything, only his code. Mary tells him to stay calm, while Sung just watches. He says again that he only remembers his code name and his purpose, and they get curious to know what that purpose is. He says he couldn't say, so Sung starts choking him. He uses that glove to squeeze even harder. The girl orders him to let go, but Sung also threatens her, telling Mary to shut up, and that scares her. The guy calls him an ungrateful hybrid, and asks how he dares to lie to someone who saved his life. However, the plant head was telling the truth. He didn't remember anything. After a while, the glove started releasing a hot water vapor. Mary asks why he said 9 was a bastard hybrid. Seems like she doesn't really know what these hybrids are, and we'll see that later on. Then Sung ends up giving up. And after letting go of the boy's neck, we see it was all burned. Mary runs over, asking if he was okay. But the young one said that hybrids recover quickly, and she didn't need to worry. At that moment, the plant head says he saw a tower. That catches Sung's attention, who turns around and asks what tower that was. 9 said it was a water tower, but since he was tired, he thinks it was an illusion. However, it was very large, and reached the top of the sky. There would be enough water to supply an entire river. The guy starts laughing when he hears those words, and 9 keeps insisting, saying it was just an illusion. With that, Sung asks if when he got close to that tower, it had disappeared. He said no, because he didn't even manage to get close, since he ended up passing out. However, the spiky-haired guy said that it wasn't an illusion. He himself had already seen that water tower, and keeps thinking that he found a clue about who the guys behind that tower are. He reveals to the group that he's been investigating that water tower for a long time, and Mary is surprised. And so, he tells the two of them that they should go there to investigate and uncover the truth. When he uncovers this mystery, he will be able to get his revenge. This story is really good, guys. I'm serious. The beginning might seem a little slow, but it's gonna get even more interesting. When I read this, I couldn't stop. She calls an android to take care of the flower shop. Sung told Mary not to stall, because they needed to go right away. Meanwhile, the girl was giving instructions to the android. The plant head found it strange that she was giving so much information to someone. But then, they started running out of the village. The android just watched them leave. While leaving the village, the plant head said he had a question. He wanted to know who that masked man was, because he saw several of them in the village. Mary explains that they are androids. They do tasks for people and are very obedient. The boy finds that very interesting, but Sung doesn't like them. He said those androids give him the creeps, and no one knows what's under that gas mask. Besides, the reason they were created was already enough for him not to like them. And to make matters worse, humans use them for things humans could do themselves. Mary gets excited because she was leaving the village after a long time. He even asks why she didn't leave the village if she liked the outside world so much. The girl explains that it's because there are a lot of monsters that tend to devour people, and that scares Nine. She starts laughing, saying it was a joke. Meanwhile, Sung said the world is much worse than those horror stories. She keeps joking, saying things aren't like that, and he even says she should spend a night alone to learn. The plant head is happy, thinking he's making new friends. While in reality, Mary was arguing with her tenant. The scene changes to a bit later, as it was getting dark. They found some cacti, and said it would be good to make camp there. Since they were hungry, they would cook those cacti. It would be good to make the fire quickly, as it would get dark. That way, they start cooking the cacti, making a stew. Sung tries it, and everyone comments that the smell was really good. As strange as it seems, he liked cooking for people and kept telling them to try it. Mary grabs a bowl of stew, and the plant head gets excited, saying it looks delicious. She doesn't really believe it tastes good, but after trying it, her cheeks even turn red. That cactus was delicious, and even desert animals ate it. After a while, they clean the pots and sit around the fire chatting. The plant head asks the man what his job was. He said he was a detective and solved mysteries in the village. The boy gets excited, saying that's amazing. Meanwhile, Mary mocks him, saying that job doesn't pay anything, and that he's so good at solving mysteries that he's even in debt. He had been trying to solve the mystery of the water tower for a long time, and the plant head said that was amazing. The guy gets all proud, since at least someone appreciated his work. Then he explains that he's already investigated many cases, like the Flying Islands one, and also the giant monster case. All of those seemed like legends, but the water tower is the one with the most evidence. And that's why he was going to find out if it's real or not, and still thinks it might be connected to those guys. Nine gets really excited, and so they decide it's better to rest. Everyone lies down around the fire, and at that moment, in the distance, some people start spying on them. They look like some reptiles, and are talking about whether they should inform the boss about the humans. One of them said the humans ate that cactus, so it would be okay. After they leave, the plant head asks Sung if those people on the hill were dangerous. From down there, they had noticed they were being watched, but Sung says they were harmless. Then he tells the boy to sleep peacefully, because he would protect them. Even Mary realizes that Sung was very trustworthy outside the village. However, it seemed like those were exactly the guys he was talking about. If he followed them now, he could catch them. However, he ends up having a dream. He was watching a reptile eating an insect, and found that very interesting. So he picked it up in his hands, and even started playing with the lizard. But then, two scientists appear. The man makes a strange face, and ends up getting wounded in the chest. He falls to the ground, while the woman screams. It looks like she's wounded too. And in the background, Sung, who is still a child, sees the silhouette of someone behind them. It looked like an android, and he starts crying. And when that android removes the mask, it had a human face. That way, he ends up waking up. However, Mary was also having a dream that took place in her house. We see the same scientists, and the man comes in, opening the door. She presents the little flower pot, and he is happy. But then she hears a noise, and a bit of red liquid splashes on her face. She screams, desperate, and when she looks at the woman, something had also happened. Both were hit, and now the woman was lifeless. The little girl starts crying, and we see that scene was very traumatizing for her, and it even looked like there was someone in that room, watching Mary cry. And finally, we go to the dream of the plant head. Again, those two scientists appear. Nine was a little baby, and was happy with the two scientists, and even seemed to feel safe. But unexpectedly, they change their expressions, turning evil looking. They lock the little boy in a cage and prepare a syringe. The kid starts crying in fear, and when he wakes up, his new friends ask if he was okay. The plant head was desperate, and Sung said they had fallen into a trap. Mary kicks him in the head, because he was the one who cooked the cacti, and he even said that, now that it was brighter, he could see those plants better. When people ate those cacti, they would have hallucinations during sleep. They were indeed edible, but you couldn't eat too much. Besides, these hallucinations could make a person sad or happy. Nine asks if they saw the water tower, and Mary thinks it's not real. It could just be illusions from the people who eat the cacti. Right after, she says that when they return to the village, he could live together with Sung, and to make him accept, she keeps threatening to charge the overdue rent. Then Sung invites the plant head. The boy thanks them and says he's very happy to have made new friends. Meanwhile, Sung thinks he should have followed those guys, and even wonders what they are planning. At that moment, Mary hears someone calling for help, and when they look ahead, there was a pack of hyenas. They had taken a small lizard hostage, and Sung already gets annoyed, saying those guys are disgusting. The scene changes to the inside of a cave, and we see two lizards patrolling. They go to the chief to give some information. One of them says there were 3 humans nearby, and it was fine because they had eaten the dream cacti. They were talking about the water tower, and give that information to the chief of the salamander tribe. The guys walk away, commenting on the appearance of the humans, and even mention that one had spiky white hair, while the other had a head full of plant leaves. The salamander chief asks them to go back, and asks if that white-haired guy said he was a detective. The purple salamander said yes, that he heard him saying he worked with investigations. That makes the chief get more serious, and say that this guy was a dear friend, and also a sworn enemy. The lizards in the back ask if they should go arrest him, but the chief says no. At that moment, another lizard appears saying he has an urgent matter. He was desperate and said it seemed like someone had been kidnapped. The chief pays attention, and in that moment, the scene returns to Sung's battle with the hyenas. The monster lets out a roar, spitting saliva in his face. Then the guy dodges the attack, leaving the hyena surprised, that robotic glove starts releasing steam, and he lands a powerful blow on the monster's chest. The glove was releasing very strong steam, and he even said those monsters shouldn't be spitting in his face. The lizard who had been taken hostage just watches, and ends up saying he's going to appoint Sung as his bodyguard, and asks him to defeat the hyenas. He spoke as if he were someone super important, and the monsters tell him to shut up. At that moment, Sung sets fire to the other one that had been defeated, and everyone gets scared, saying he's very dangerous. Even the plant head gets frightened. Everyone noticed that his glove had something mysterious. To shut the creature up, he steps on its head, and he even said he put out the fire just so the place wouldn't smell bad. The hyenas get scared, but they needed to retaliate. Then one hyena starts barking, and his partner in the back says that humans can tell when a hyena is swearing, and we see that Sung got irritated by that. He asks Mary to hand over the water bottle. She didn't really want to, but he takes it by force, and starts pouring water on his glove, saying the hyenas will get what they deserve. The monsters start rushing at the guy, and holding a weapon in their hands, they try to hit him from behind. It looked like now his glove was charged, and he even smiles. Right after, he hits them with his fist. It looked like the water really powered that glove, and with a charged punch, he throws both monsters far away. They fall to the ground, defeated, and even think that this human was no weakling. He said that now that he used all the water to recharge his glove, he'd have to use its full potential, and now he was going to release all the steam at once. The scene goes back to the lizard tribe. The chief says the hyenas are very strong, and they can't lower their guard, and even wonders how they dared to kidnap his son. At that moment, the little young Salome comes running. He jumps into his father's arms, while the Salamander King asks what happened. The little boy apologizes, and says he won't leave the house alone again, and points to our hero, saying it was that human who saved him. The Salamander King seems to know Sung, while our hero's group is surprised by the place, and when he looks at Sung, he's even shocked. He didn't have the same vibe as before. The king takes them to a room to thank them, and even asks what the humans desire. Our protagonist laughs, and even keeps saying to hand it over to them, and that there's no point denying it because he knew they had it. The king knew he was referring to the water, but what was strange is that Sung seemed to have lost his memory. He even thought it was just an act by the guy. At that moment, Sung said he knew those two soldiers were following him, and that last night he watched them sleep, and that in the end he ended up poisoning them with cacti. But Mary said it was their fault for eating that. The king said he couldn't give all the water they wanted because they sold that water. Our hero's group said the reptiles were putting human lives at risk by selling water that expensive. And he even asks why they live in a place like this, since they make so much money at the expense of humans by selling water. The king becomes thoughtful, thinking this is one of Sung's games. It seems they already knew each other before, but our hero lost his memory. Then he said he can't give details about how they get the water. At that moment, the guy punches the table, making everyone scared. And he even said that if they don't reveal the secret of the water soon, he's going to beat them all up. At that moment, the Salamander King realizes that Sung became someone completely different after losing his memory, so he decides to reveal the secret of the water right away. And Mary gets scared, saying she didn't know he was so mean. One of the soldiers asks the chief if he really wants to show them. Then the king says that if they don't, they might die. And in case they are attacked, they will use the ting. He would need to act with caution, because in the worst case scenario, today could be the last day of the Salamander tribe's existence. They walk through a damp and dark corridor. They were even impressed that, in the middle of the desert, there was a place like that. And Sung mentions that it was built as an escape route during the Great War. At this point, we already start theorizing why the world is all desertified. It seems like some war happened, but we'll see more ahead, so keep watching. Sung was suspicious of something. In those pipes flowed a lot of water, and they were connected to the village. The king admits that these pipes carry water to the village, and these corridors run beneath the city and were created by the ancestors. As a form of gratitude, he will show the secret to him. That look on the guy's face seemed familiar to the king. They were about to enter a slippery place. He should be careful. Our hero imagines that the secret of the water tower is in there. It was an extremely secret place, and should be kept secret, since the very life of their tribe depends on it. As soon as they arrive at the place, Sung is surprised. There was an extremely gigantic tower, and it seemed to use ancient technology. The soldiers obey the king's order to activate the tower, and they start turning on the devices. A light starts traveling through the tower, creating strange drawings and patterns. 9 is surprised, and it seems like he recognized those drawings. Then the tower starts gushing water upward. It was water that didn't run out, and they realized that this was the device responsible for that mysterious water tower in the desert. It seems surreal, and Mary even asks if they were under the illusion effect of the cactus. Sung thinks it would be great for the village to have this much water, but the king says he won't share it with them. The boy even tries to question it, saying that reptiles don't even need that much water. And besides, people have lost their lives due to lack of water. Mary also tries to convince them, saying people go through a lot of hardships and it would be unfair not to share. In response, the lizard said that it was humans who destroyed justice, and that human greed created this world. They didn't understand what he meant, and the king adds that, because of the wars, hybrids came into existence. These hybrid lizards were given the mission to guard this ancient artifact, and their tribe has done so for decades. This mechanism was created to slow down the desertification, and that was before the Great War began. The scientists asked the lizard tribe to take care of it, and in the end, all the scientists ended up losing their lives. Mary is a bit shocked to hear this story, and she understands that if everyone finds out that there is an artifact that can generate water, the war would start again. And all that story of conflict she heard when she was a child would repeat. Sung just listens to her say that, right after the king takes them outside, climbing some stairs. Our hero didn't seem to agree much with this, and so they stop in the corridor in front of a staircase, saying that this hatch leads to the village. After passing through that hatch, they really appear in the city. She understood that this was how they managed to get there to sell water. People went through a lot of hardship, but she knew that if the ancient device were discovered, a war would begin, so she would have to keep this a secret. Our protagonist tells her to act normal, or they would notice that secret passage. Back at the Salamander tribe, they were worried if the humans would keep the secret. The soldiers even suggest using the ting, but the king says he would only use it as a last resort. That's because if it happened to be awakened, it would become extremely powerful, and no one could stop it. And the ting seemed to be a giant lizard. A little boy goes there to play with the big guy, and starts telling all about his adventure of having been kidnapped. The ting doesn't respond at all, and the boy invites him for a walk. With that, the giant lizard stands up, and starts making baby-like noises. The little boy says they need to leave quickly, or else his father will be upset, and so he runs away from his tribe again. Outside, the water tower was on. The hyenas managed to find the hole where the tower was gushing water out, and they even comment that it was worth letting the boy be rescued, because they followed him. And they still mention that their master will be happy with this discovery. They leave to report everything. Our protagonist has those visions again. He sees a man surrounded by white smoke. And when that man starts taking off the mask, we see that he looks a lot like Sung. The little boy starts crying. And to finish, that man who looked like him makes an evil smile. He had really lost his memory, and when he remembered that scene, he got curious. It was as if that dream haunted him every night. At that moment, he hears a noise and is surprised. Mary was also sleeping in her room. It seemed like she was having a nightmare. And she even starts to cry, but she gets scared by a scream. She runs outside to see what had happened. And our hero was trembling with fear, pointing his finger at a place. It looked like there was someone in the middle of that darkness. And the girl also gets scared. They start screaming, trying to protect themselves. But it was the plant head, now with cacti in his hair. They ask what the hell happened to his head, and the boy asks what's so strange about it. When they get inside, everyone starts laughing, saying he looked really funny. Mary tells Nove not to worry about it. He explains that when he ingests a plant, it sprouts in his hair, taking something out of his bag. He said he had something important to show. It was a mysterious notebook with a strange cover. He said it was an illustrated encyclopedia of plants, full of details, and it looked like an old book. When she picks it up to look, Mary finds it quite interesting, and says the information is amazing. Our protagonist takes the book to have a look. He realizes the book was purposely aged to look old, and besides that had a writing style he recognized. Since he had lost his memory, he didn't really know what it was, but it felt familiar. Mary asks why he's acting so strange, and when he looks at those drawings he realizes it's the same pattern that was on that water tower machine. The plant head says he recognized those drawings. That's why he wanted to show the book. It was very similar to those ancient drawings on the water tower, so he thought it was all connected. He mentioned a mysterious letter, and Mary took the book to read. The letter was a bit torn and couldn't be read completely, and they asked if Alfonso could perhaps restore it. In a slightly cheerful tone, Mary said for him not to worry because she had a friend who fixed things. It seemed like there was something secret connected with that ancient artifact in the memories of both the plant head and Sung. You'll see how this story is crazy and full of interconnected things. But when he reads the book, Sung has even more doubts about his past. Then he asks the plant head why he decided to show that notebook only now. Besides, when they found him the first time, he didn't want to say anything about his so-called purpose, and now he showed all the information. He said that day his memory was a bit weak, so he didn't even remember the book. But after he saw those writings on the tower, he remembered that his purpose was to investigate all the plants in that book. That's why he thought it would be good to tell them, and Mary is happy to know that. When she finds an interesting page, she shows it to Sung. He reads it very carefully, and right after says he's sleepy and is going to rest. The scene changes to the hyena tribe. They had discovered where the salamander tribe was hidden, and they tell this to their master. The guy was wearing a really bizarre mask, and at that moment we see a piece of that letter that was damaged, but you can't understand almost anything. Sung closes the book, and says that no matter how many times he reads it, he doesn't understand anything. And judging by the writing style, it seems related to the old government of this world. Sitting at the counter, he tells Mary that they also need to investigate the origin of the plant head. At that moment he realizes that she's not listening to what he's saying. That's because she was enchanted by Nova's head, and asks what Sung did to him. We see that the boy had his head full of flowers, and she thinks it's cute. Actually, our hero gave a lot of flowers for the boy to eat, to see if they would grow on his head. And he even mentions that this power could be very useful. At that moment someone appears. It was Alfonso along with his automatons. He came at Mary's request so he could analyze that book. Sung seems to have some kind of grudge with Alfonso, because our hero owed him money. Alfonso sees that there's a strange boy, and introduces himself to Nove, saying his name. Right after, Alfonso asks to take a shower at their house, but only if he did a favor. After taking a shower and washing the dust off, Mary gives him the book to analyze. The guy finds it very strange and curious, but it was almost impossible to restore. The plant head thanks him for the attempt, and Mary tells him not to get discouraged. However, there was something that could be done. Alfonso said it would take a lot of time and require a lot of money, but he might be able to restore maybe 80% of the pages. The only problem actually would be the cost of doing all that. Mary asks how much money he would need, and he said it would cost nothing. He wouldn't accept money from a girl as beautiful as Mary, so he had a condition. Just by looking at that scoundrel's face, you can already guess what he's up to. At that moment, we see that the hyena tribe jumped into the water tower hole. And we see that there were many hyenas going there. With so many creatures like that, we already know the salamanders are screwed. Little by little, they start eliminating their enemies, and they do it without mercy. Those two soldiers warn the chief that the place was invaded, and to make things worse, Ting was not found, and the chief's son also disappeared. The king imagines that the boy is with Ting, and that they need to buy time. A soldier says they will stay to fight the hyenas, and the chief should run, since it was important that he stayed alive. However, the king says that if everyone there dies, there would be no one left to find the young Salome. Besides, the boy shouldn't be too far away, and when he returned, he would also be captured by the hyenas. At that moment, the hyenas appear behind them, and it was a chimera hybrid with 3 heads. And that way, the salamander king starts to fight this bizarre 3-headed monster. The king draws a very resistant scale sword, and still tells his soldiers to hurry to find his son, and that he will stay behind holding off the hyenas. They didn't want to do that, but it was an order from the king, so they go running. And in that way, he returns to the battle. The hyena, besides being strong, was very fast, but he had his sword, and tries to hit it. In a surprising move, he grabs his weapon, and the king says this monster was more resistant than he thought. The hyenas keep mentioning that the king was also strong for being able to handle such a heavy sword. The guy was shaking from exerting so much strength, and after squeezing with its claws, the hyena manages to break part of the sword. The king didn't expect that to be possible, and the creature goes in to deliver the final blow. The king tries to dodge and ends up getting his face hit, and they even mock him, saying the boss will really like what they did. The salamander king's eye was injured, but even so, he wouldn't give up the battle and tries to strike again. However, he tricks the hyena with an attack. And instead of striking with the sword, he grabs the creature's face, and now with the sword in hand, he could strike the hyena directly, and he raises his sword intending to split the monster. That would be a powerful blow, and he ends up delivering the attack. The scene returns to the human village. Mary asks if Alfonso wants to join them. He wouldn't do it just to help them because he had his own reasons. But for now, he couldn't tell them. Mary said that information about extinct plants was a possible answer to recover Novi's memory. Alfonso says that Sung is also aware of that. This book was dangerous. Mary gets a little scared by that, and the guy says that investigating this book could bring problems. Thinking about it, there was a lot of mystery surrounding all this. Besides the plant head losing his memory, they also modified a book to look old. Whoever wrote this book is also related to the relic in the water tower, and even though they didn't know who it was, these people were known to be dangerous. Mary keeps saying they're being too dramatic. Sung tells everyone that, since he's a detective, he knows this is something he couldn't handle alone. That's why as soon as he found out about this book, he immediately called Alfonso so he could help. Without him, our hero's group wouldn't be able to uncover the mystery, especially about the damaged letter. As he had said, this investigation could risk their lives, and he asks if Alfonso is willing to take that risk. The guy smiles and says it will be a pleasure to help. With the book in hand, he asks for a few days to investigate it better. But the boy asks everyone to wait. He wouldn't want to put the lives of his new friends at risk just to recover his memory. He had just met them, and his memories weren't that important. Everyone listens to him say those words. At that moment, we see the Salamander King's sword broken. The hyena apologizes for breaking his little toy. The king had lost the battle. He managed to pierce the salamander's belly with his claws, and giving an evil laugh, said that the king should be more careful and not act so tough. However, while the hyena was talking, it notices something wrong. One of the hyena's heads and arm were cut off by the sword, and even though the king had suffered a critical attack, he also managed to strike back. But now his sword was broken. Several hyenas ended up arriving at the scene. He couldn't fight all of them, and he realized that could be his end. And so he is attacked by all the hyenas at once. The little boy was returning home along with Ting. He asked his big friend to hurry back, because he was afraid his father would be mad. Everything was very quiet, and he thought the soldiers were looking for him. And at that moment, the little boy saw something that left him terrified. The halls of the Salamander tribe were all dirty. He asked what had happened, and he already starts to get worried, thinking that all of this is because of him. This boy only causes trouble and ended up putting everyone's lives in his tribe at risk. At that moment, one of the soldiers covers the young Salome's mouth and asks him to be quiet. The hyenas were walking through the halls, looking for more stragglers. The little boy keeps shouting, saying he's going to take down those hyenas. The soldier told him to be quiet and that they needed to escape from there, but he wouldn't leave his father behind. For having shouted, the hyenas managed to find them. He tells the master to run, and that he would stay in front. The little Salome has tears in his eyes. But at that moment, one of the hyenas ends up being struck. Ting was there to protect the little Master Salome. The hyenas start trembling with fear, and little by little, several of them begin to surround Ting. The soldier takes this chance to grab young Salome and flee from there. And now the giant lizard would fight against all the other hyenas. He had a serious look on his face, and the hyenas realized that creature was dangerous. So they decide to pass through him, intending to get the young master. The barrels on Ting's back end up breaking, and some lizard tails come out from inside them. The hyena realized she was screwed, and when they looked back, they saw that the giant lizard was a mutant. Those tails started striking the hyenas, eliminating all of them, and in just a few moments, he managed to defeat dozens of enemies. That masked master of the hyenas was watching all of that, and even said it was interesting to still have a lizard with the ability to grow tails. The three-headed hyena was carrying its arm, looking for the master. As soon as it finds the master, it starts apologizing. The man says that hyena was very careless, but since he had already ridden it before, he could do it again. He just needed to sew it. The creature asks if that's true, and the master says yes, and that it would be possible to fix him as many times as needed. That's because he had an incredible body, and was almost indestructible, and with a serious look the master says he deserved a reward. The monster was afraid that this reward would be something bad, and even asks if the master wouldn't do something painful to him. Since he was drawing a sword-shaped cane, the master said no, and asks if by chance the hyena doesn't trust him. While the hyena says he trusts the master, he already goes ahead and uses his sword, cutting the creature. He cut parts of the monster, and with its head on the ground, he keeps saying he's going to do something fun. The guy removes the mask and says these hyenas are interesting, and that he couldn't throw them away. And he gives an evil laugh, similar to the laugh of the person who eliminated the scientists in our protagonist's dream. The scene goes back to Ting, who was battling the hyenas. He had won the battle, but was tired. Meanwhile, Alfonso said he investigated the book but didn't discover much, so he was going to leave and try to restore the pages. At that moment, Sung goes to the plant head and asks if by any chance this boy thinks they're investigating this only to recover his memories. In fact, they wanted to restore the book to investigate the relic of the water tower. They weren't even slightly interested in helping the plant head. They didn't care about him but were curious to uncover the secrets of this world. Those words were very harsh, and the boy felt a bit sad. Mary even tells Sung to go easy. The guy says he also lost his memories, so he knows how the boy feels. At that moment, someone appears screaming. It sounded like Salome's voice, so they're shocked. Young Salome was outside with his two soldiers. Our protagonist says that if the little boy came to play, this wasn't the place. However, he was crying, asking for help. He said that his father mentioned Sung was very strong, so he'd like his help to save his tribe. And he also said they were attacked by the hyenas. The place was a complete mess, and the big guy was out of control. Using the secret passage, they managed to reach the salamander tribe very quickly. Since it would be dangerous, only Alfonso and Sung went there. The soldier tells them to speak quietly, because the hyenas were stealthy. Besides, Ting might have awakened, and that would be dangerous. The guys ask what this awakening thing was, and the salamander tells him to be quiet. At that moment, our protagonist ends up jumping, and manages to land a punch on the creature's tail, thus protecting the lives of his companions. He even asks the soldier if it wasn't the hyenas that were attacking. It wouldn't make sense to have an octopus tentacle. The guy said that wasn't a tentacle, but rather Ting's tail, and he had started to awaken. That tail was huge, and they keep saying it had a strange smell. Our protagonist wasn't understanding anything, and asks where the hyenas were. And while trying to understand, another tail tried to attack him. He moved very fast, and managed to dodge. Alfonso calls his friend's attention, but the soldier asks him to wait. The lizard explains that if he runs to that thing, he'll also die. That creature was very strong, and wouldn't listen to what they said. We see that our protagonist was managing to hold the monster's tails, but it wasn't easy at all, so he tells everyone to run to save the king, because he would stay behind and defeat Ting. The soldier asks if by any chance he is an idiot, and just looking at that creature's face, it was clear that it was extremely powerful, and with an unfriendly look, Sung said that's why he hates hybrids. The scene goes back to the village, and the little boy went to a restaurant. Mary took him there so he could clear his mind. However, he wasn't able to think about eating. She apologizes, and said that staying worried wouldn't help, because it wouldn't solve anything. The poor boy was crying, but Mary assured him that the boys would manage to bring his father back, and even told him to focus on something else, and not be so worried. He wiped his eyes, and if by chance he didn't want to eat, they could go back home, holding the spoon. Salome said it was alright, and started eating, saying the food wasn't that bad. Deep down, she didn't have much hope that the boy's father was alive, and we see that the king was locked up. But at least still alive, that crazy doctor was doing experiments with a monster. The king asks if it was him who created this monster, and the doctor said he would be upset if they kept calling them monsters, because they were his beloved toys. The salamander king wanted to know the name of this doctor, but he said he had forgotten, and that it didn't make sense to have a name, since people always call him doctor. Inside the cage, the king said that the doctor's name didn't deserve to be spoken. That's because he did horrible things. And then asks if he came there because of the ancient relic, but the doctor says he only came for fun. That makes the king furious, and starts shouting inside the cage that he would eliminate this idiot. When he tried to get up, he realized he had no legs, and the strangest thing of all is that he wasn't feeling any pain. It was as if his legs had never been there. The doctor keeps laughing, saying he's very good at what he does, and that even though he didn't come because of the relic, he would be very happy to learn more about it. The salamander said he would never tell him. Another thing the doctor found interesting was Ting, because of his tails. And he even asks if the salamander and his son also have the gene to multiply tails. Since the king didn't answer, the doctor thinks he was right in his deductions. And now that he had finished playing with the three-headed hyena, he would move on to the next project. To finish the operation, he grabs his sword, and after striking the creature, it opens its eyes. As if by magic, it comes back to life. But now it couldn't speak. The doctor said he removed the hyena's ability to speak because he thought it wasn't useful. And before leaving the place, he said he would let the Salamander King live a little longer because it would be fun. And holding the king's legs, he says maybe he'll put them back. But for now, he'll leave them up there, so he doesn't miss them. Back to our hero's fight against Ting, he notices something strange about those tails. The beast tries to hit him again, and now manages to grab him and starts squeezing. Alfonso was worried about his friend, and even asks the soldier why that monster is acting so out of control. The soldier says he had awakened, and now they could only wait until he returned to normal. But at that moment, Sung manages to cut his tail with that steam glove. The monster screams in pain, while our hero said he had let his guard down for a moment. The lizard soldier understood why the boss said that human was powerful. That's because he was managing to fight against Ting. However, the situation was getting really serious, and whatever happened, they should pray to stay alive. Sung grabs Alfonso's scarf and pulls him down because the boy was almost hit squarely. He even lets out a scream, saying that was close. His life had flashed before his eyes, and he's even embarrassed about it. Besides, there was a three-headed monster they had to defeat, so Alfonso should go ahead, while Sung would take care of that chimera. Looking at that bizarre creature, he realizes it would be better to face the hyenas, and ends up saying goodbye, waving his hand. The soldier was afraid Alfonso would be eliminated, because the hyenas were very strong. The protagonist asks if the lizard doesn't trust him, and even mentions that Alfonso is very powerful, and not even he could defeat him. So the soldier goes guiding the boy to the main hall, where he imagines the hyenas are. Alfonso asks if that chimera has anything to do with the relic they guard, but the soldier wouldn't tell. He only explains that the chimera has a hidden gene that makes the tail grow. No matter how strong Ting was, Sung would defeat him. That's because his friend had a ridiculously powerful ability. And we see him battling the monstrous enemy. Poor Ting was out of control, and our protagonist was using the power of that glove, releasing steam. The soldier couldn't believe that human was that strong, and even asks why his friend trusted him so much. Alfonso asks if he saw that steam. Sung's ability was related to that. However, the power wasn't in the glove, he only used it to channel his power. Besides, that glove was a temporary replacement, because his main weapon was under maintenance. Sung's true power was to produce heat. He used that heat as kinetic energy to move very fast, and we see that's exactly what Sung was doing, cutting all of Ting's tails. He makes sushi out of the monster. If it were an ordinary person, his whole body would be destroyed, but his friend was very resistant. Now he would give a math equation to the soldiers. He said Sung can throw 4 to 5 punches in a thousandth of a second, and asks how many punches he can throw in a full second. And we see him throwing an absurd amount of strikes at the creature. The chimera couldn't do anything, and even falls to the ground unconscious. He had used a lot of energy and complains that this new glove is a bit weird. It was releasing a lot of steam, but the soldier said that wouldn't be enough to defeat Ting. We see that the chimera was regenerating, and when Sung looked back, he realized the fight wasn't over. The soldier kept saying that awakening was terrifying. That's because the main ability was regeneration, and the monster had fully recovered, with all its tails regenerated. But Sung wouldn't just stand there waiting. At that moment, the Salamander King wakes up, feeling a bit dizzy, and comes face to face with that crazy doctor. One of his legs had been put back, and it seemed like the doctor had some mysterious power, because there wasn't even a stitch mark. Letting out an evil laugh, the guy keeps bragging about his skills, and said he was remembering the old days, when he learned his techniques. He could do these things without using anesthesia, and even asks if the king was curious to know whether he would get the other leg back. Right after, he steps away saying he won't do it, because he wants to study Ting. He also says he will be able to uncover the real power of the monster. The scene cuts back to our hero, extremely tired. No matter how many times he defeated the monster, it kept regenerating. And very quickly, at that moment, those yellow orbs on the tail start to emit a strong light, and the creature's tail, which was pink, starts turning black. Sung already asks what the hell is this, poor guy can't catch a break, and the giant lizard starts glowing, looking like an alien. As he says goodbye, the doctor says he's going to discover more about Ting. And as he walks down the hallway, he gets startled. The hyena he just repaired had been defeated. He had made the three-headed hyena 20 times stronger than before, and even wonders who managed to defeat it. Who was arriving there was Alfonso, along with the lizard soldier. The doctor gets mad at the two of them, saying they ruined his toy before he could play with it. The soldier knows that this guy is the hyena's boss, and flashing back a few minutes, we see that they were walking down the hallway. That three-headed hyena showed up, hitting Alfonso head-on, sending him flying far away. The poor lizard was already worried, and when he looked to the side, he saw it was the three-headed hyena, but unexpectedly the creature fell to the ground. Alfonso started complaining, saying he didn't see the monster approaching, and unexpectedly the creature was defeated, and they didn't know how. The soldier even thinks this human is so powerful he defeats enemies without even realizing it, and didn't understand why he was hiding his power. At this moment, back in the present, the doctor tries to strike Alfonso with his sword. He starts complaining, saying he cut his hair, but the guy really wanted to know how he defeated the three-headed hyena. And the strangest part was how this guy dodged his attack. He tried again to deliver several blows, but Alfonso dodged them all. And laughing, he approached the masked man, apologizing for being clumsy, and even jokes, saying he tripped on a rock. He touches the doctor's shoulder and seems to place some kind of tracking device on him. However, the doctor feels that this Alfonso is trying to cast some spell on him, and so tries to get away, pushing the guy to the floor. The blue-haired guy falls hard, and the lizard asks if his friend is okay. The doctor states that the Salamander King is locked in that room, behind them, and says he doesn't have time to play with them. The lizard tries to go after the doctor, but Alfonso says the priority is to see if the chief is alive, and so they should let the doctor leave. Back to the battle, Sung was landing countless attacks, but now that Ting had awakened, none of those hits were doing any damage. He had already landed over 5,000 punches, and it was useless. He didn't even scratch those tails. At that moment, the creature seems to trap him with no way out, but he used the steam from his glove to dodge, and ends up with an injury on his face. Now this monster was much faster, and the attacks became more precise, so he couldn't lower his guard. If he made a mistake, it would all be over. The Salamander King was alive, sitting on the stone table, his leg was healed, and he even wonders what kind of technology that doctor had. The strangest thing was that the doctor seemed to know Sung. The soldier, along with Alfonso, finds the king, and asks if he was okay. The lizard notices that his chief's leg had been cut, so they introduce Alfonso, saying he came along with Sung. The king wanted to know if Ting had awakened, and the soldier said yes, and that they were in a fierce fight. Once he awakened, all they could do was wait, because there was nothing they could do. That doctor was spying at the end of the hallway. From afar, he was watching the fight. It would be impossible for a human to defeat a monster like that. However, our hero wouldn't give up and goes in. Using his full power, he lands several hits on the creature's tail, and that doctor seems to get excited watching the fight. Even though he landed several punches, it was all for nothing, and he realizes he was making unnecessary effort. The blow was really strong, and even seems to sink into the monster's chest. With that, he realized that if he kept focusing on hitting a specific spot, he would get better results. So he activated full strength. The attack was so strong it sent Ting flying, and the doctor, watching that, imagined that extracting parts of the creature would be easier than expected. However, that fight didn't end well for our hero. He had been hit, and started screaming in pain. The doctor hadn't noticed that, and several of the monster's tails had struck our hero's back. He lets out a laugh, saying he didn't expect to die in such a pathetic way. He imagined his farewell would be with a smile, not crying like a damn baby. He grabs the monster's tail, but he was already out of strength. The doctor comments that he didn't imagine Sung would go like this. And in this way, the monster also falls to the ground. Defeated, the two had lost the battle. That crazy doctor approaches and asks if Sung wasn't supposed to be the White Butcher. He touches the boy's face and starts laughing like a maniac. He also comments that he is already dead. There was no point in checking for breathing, as he had 3 huge holes in his chest, and he still mocks, saying that Sung lost his combat skills. Normally, he wouldn't lose to a creature like that, says this crazy guy. But he had a solution and goes over to extract those yellow orbs from the monster. He said he would take care of it really quickly. Meanwhile, he keeps laughing, saying that he's a genius of medicine. The scene shifts to Mary's house, and everyone was worried. She was telling Salome that his dad would come back okay. At that moment, an android appears. Alfonso was using a transmitter to speak with them through the android. He was saying not to worry, that everything was fine, and the boss was alive. The boy's father tells Salome to stay calm, that they would be back soon. The little boy jumps with joy, but they say he can't go down there yet because the place was still dangerous. And on top of everything, there was a crazy doctor doing experiments in the area. And the most critical situation of all was that Ting had awakened. They said Sung was fighting, and they didn't rule out the possibility that he had lost. And this shocks all of them. We see that our hero had those yellow tail orbs on top of his body. The doctor keeps saying that it would serve to regenerate the injuries, but it would have to be a fast regeneration. Otherwise, he wouldn't come back to life. Besides, maybe it would be useful to recover his memory. And he keeps saying he's gonna take one of those yellow orbs to run experiments, and said everything would get very interesting once that boy recovered his past memories. He even wanted to talk and play a bit more with Sung, but he didn't have time. Now that he had a regeneration orb in his hands, he said he was heading to the next mission, and leaves the Salamander tribe location with an evil look. He said he couldn't wait to meet Sung again. After some time, the king asks for a report on the situation. The hyena clan was eliminated, and the few who remained had fled. Sung was recovering, and everyone was worried about the boss's injuries. They tell that the doctor extracted parts of Teng's tail to try to heal the boy. However, he was still unconscious and had shown no clear signs of recovery. Mary, along with Planthead, appears at the location asking how the boss was. Alfonso made him a robotic leg, and even said he should keep the leg clean. The girl asks if by chance Sung had already woken up, and they say no. That makes her worried. Already in the recovery room, she was gathering some plants that she believed would help in the healing. He had been sleeping in that place for quite some time, and they said he would recover better there because of the humidity. The girl thought those plants could help, so she ended up placing a pot near him. Those flowers gave off a pleasant smell, and they comment that they will pray for him to be okay. Alfonso goes over to a cage, and there was the 3-headed hyena locked up. He wanted to know why those hyenas invaded the place, but they wouldn't tell. When the hyena looked to the side, it realized the other 2 heads were no longer alive. Alfonso said that if he didn't cut off those heads soon, the entire body of the hyena would rot. So it was better for the creature to start talking about why they invaded that place. That guy, with blue hair, gives a slightly evil chuckle, and keeps provoking, saying that the doctor they called Chief fled, leaving him behind. The hyena just stares, and then the guy touches the hyena's head and uses his power. The hyena keeps yelling for this human to get his filthy hands off her, but he needed to concentrate for the power to work. So he starts doing a kind of hypnosis on the creature. He manages to see the past of the hyena village. There were some kids playing in the street. A man told them to stop making noise because they would disturb the neighbors. In response, the hyena children said they had no other place to play, and the guy who was complaining was precisely this hyena that was now locked up. They lived peacefully in that village. Until recently, a disease began to spread. The hyenas who died gave off a bad smell and had a black coloration. Then someone appeared saying that it was a disease that could wipe out the village. The guy who appeared was precisely that crazy doctor who claimed to have the solution to help. Of course, the hyena was suspicious, but couldn't refuse help. The doctor said that in 1 week he could eliminate the disease, and that if they didn't act quickly, all the children would die. The hyena asked to speak privately with the doctor. Although he didn't like it, he ended up agreeing. Inside the house, the doctor said the plague came from the forest. The hyena offered food to the man. When he looked at the plate, he felt disgusted. It was a watery soup with bits of bread. The hyena apologized, saying they were going through a lot of hardship, and that the doctor shouldn't act disrespectfully. The guy decided to get straight to the point, asking how this masked man could help. He responded that the disease was known as the Black Plague, spread by rats that carried fleas. The symptoms included high fever, dizziness, vomiting, and loss of consciousness. The hyena realized that the guy really understood, knelt down and asked for help. He said he would do anything to fight the plague. Crying, he said he couldn't let the villagers suffer so much. The doctor realized he could take advantage of that. While kneeling, the man asked if he agreed to do everything he commanded. The hyena said yes. Then he gave the instructions. First, they should spray a smoke to kill the bacteria. Then lock in a cell the hyenas showing symptoms of the disease. And finally burn them all together to prevent the plague from spreading. With regret, they lamented what they had to do, but it was necessary to save the village. At night, they talked about what they did in the morning. They told the doctor that they searched for him for hours. They wanted to know if the village was safe now. The doctor says he understands the hyena's sadness, but that she shouldn't be like that this was only the beginning of the deal. The hybrid creature asks what deal. The doctor reminds him that the guy had agreed to do everything. He explains that actually there was no plague, that the medicine they sprayed was a hypnotic, and now she would be a puppet. The hyena falls to the ground feeling sick. That's how that doctor managed to control the entire hyena tribe. Alfonso discovered this through his power, and managed to break the illusion from the hyena's mind. Now free from hypnosis, the three-headed monster asked the boy to release him, saying he would take revenge on the doctor. The human replied that he wouldn't do that, because he couldn't stop the masked man. Besides, he wasn't the only one suffering at the hands of that man, and he also wouldn't let the doctor die. With a sinister look, Alfonso says he is not friends with the doctor, but that his skills were unmatched. The monster doesn't understand anything, and the human says he was shocked to find someone capable of creating an illusion medicine using his own DNA. Here we already start suspecting Alfonso. I suspected him from the beginning, but it was at this moment that I was sure he is a villain, or at least an anti-hero. He still explains that part of his power consists of creating hybrids, or something like that. He doesn't even know for sure. Extending his hand, he says he will let this hyena rot. Touching the creature's face, she starts crying. Later, he leaves the cage. Mary asks if he is okay, because they heard a scream. The guy jokes, asking if she was worried about him. The girl feels embarrassed by the joke. Outside, everyone hears the hyena saying she was rotting and asking for help. The girl asks what is happening. Alfonso says he is disintegrating because of that doctor, but we know that is a lie. Plant Head says he doesn't understand what is going on. It was strange, but it seemed like he had seen that doctor before. And the worst is that it wasn't possible to tell if he was good or evil. But what he did was unforgivable. At that moment, Salome shouts for Mary, and very happy tells the girl to follow him. That's because Sung had woken up. Our hero was getting up, and even looked thoughtful. This was the first season of this Manhwa. If you're enjoying it, leave a like and a comment, because writing the script has been very hard. The story is so complex that I had to record several times to make this video. And one way to help is by commenting, so YouTube recommends our video to more people. The second season of the work already starts showing the Statue of Liberty. We see that this story takes place in our universe, after a great war. Before the war began, the planet started being swallowed by sand dunes. That masked doctor appears in the middle of the city. He seemed to travel from place to place. The scene goes back a bit in time to a desert city. On top of a building, we see someone blonde. That person was our protagonist, wearing clothes similar to the doctor's. Alfonso appears and asks if our hero was liking it there. He also mentions that the climate of that place was a bit more habitable. He tries to start a conversation with Sung, but our hero doesn't want small talk. He even says he has no interest in being friends with him, leaving the guy embarrassed. He asks him to just deliver the mission. The man hands over the envelope, and Sung asks what the hell that was. So far, he had committed several crimes, but this time it wouldn't be to eliminate hybrids, but humans. When he looks at the list, he is a bit shocked. His target would be scientists. In the photo, those two scientists from the nightmare he had appear. Back to the present, he is lying on that stone table. Now he has recovered all his memory. He knows that the scene that tormented him at night wasn't a dream. That person in the smoke, in fact, was him. Our hero wasn't the little boy but the man with the macabre smile. Even with his memory back, he felt that was too strange to be true. At that moment, Mary appears and hugs him. She cries, saying she missed him a lot. She even calls him an idiot for making her worry so much. He smiles. Shortly after, he says he wouldn't die so easily. The mood was nice between them, and there was even a little romantic vibe. However, Planthead and Alfonso appear to ruin everything. They joke, saying they look like two lovers. The two get embarrassed and let go. Bluehead mocks, saying she couldn't stop talking about Sung. For having recovered his memory, he remembers that he knew Alfonso even before arriving at that village. Alfonso was the messenger of the organization. He even wonders what Alfonso was hiding. They go back to the village. They keep teasing Mary, saying she brought flowers to Sung every day. That made her very embarrassed. But they didn't stop teasing. The mess was so much that even Sung got embarrassed. Then she makes a sour face at the boy. He asks if she really minded. Very embarrassed. She looks at our protagonist, who says nothing. It seemed like she wanted him to defend her, so she goes outside saying she's going to water the plants. They ask Planthead to cheer Mary up. He runs off. Alfonso says that the fact she got upset shows she really likes Sung. At that moment, our protagonist tells his friend that the memories have returned. Bluehead gets a little worried. He mentions to Alfonso that they need to discuss something. Everything was still a bit jumbled, and he couldn't put the chronological order of the memories together. At that moment, Alfonso tries to put his hand on his head. Our protagonist asks what the hell he was doing. Alfonso's technique didn't work. He gives a little excuse, saying he was just checking if he had a fever. Most of the memories returned, especially the final order he had received. We don't really know, but the two were involved in something very secret. Sung said he remembers the last mission Alfonso gave him inside an envelope, but he didn't remember what happened right after. That's why he wanted Alfonso to explain in detail. Besides that, to say why he was hiding his true identity. Planthead was with Mary helping to water the plants. She said she wanted to know more about that book, and that she would help discover no matter what. Also, there was something she wanted to tell. Back to the conversation between the two. Alfonso remembers his mission was to eliminate the scientists. Until then, his targets had always been hybrids. The government was getting scared of the hybrids' strength and intelligence. Besides, they reproduced very fast. That's why they wanted to eliminate them all to feel safe. But it seems the scientists didn't want to let that happen, so the government used mutants they created during the Human Evolution Project for the war. When the war ended, they were scattered and loose around the world. Even some scientists hid hybrids in underground areas, like they did with the salamanders. Then the government suspected the scientists were using the hybrids to create a weapon against them, so they ordered him to eliminate the scientists. But an anomaly ended up arising. Normally Sung obeyed without questioning, but this time he rebelled. After that day, a white vapor rose from the city. At the center of it was that scientist. He had completed the mission, but he swore he would go after the government, tired of following orders. Then the government managed to hide him inside the net arc. Shortly after, a new cabinet took power. Because of that, he ended up forgotten. Alfonso also left the government divisions and became an android repairman. By coincidence, they met in this village. Sung thought Alfonso was placed there just to watch him, but the guy said it wasn't exactly like that. It wasn't a complete coincidence. Seeing that Sung had lost his memory and seemed happier, he thought it best not to mention anything. He decided to live a new life in that place. Our protagonist asks if he could trust Alfonso. With a villainous look, he said yes, but admitted to himself that he was a good liar. Just like Sung was no longer the same person, Alfonso guarantees he isn't either. Before he could show something to Planthead, he said he would leave. He was glad she had helped, but he had the mission to inspect the plants. While at her house, he practiced a lot and now can make sprouts with his hands. He showed a little plant he made. The plant grew a lot, and he gave it to her, saying his power was evolving fast. That's why he wanted to leave, but she didn't want to let him. Novi was just waiting for Sung to wake up to say goodbye to him, but Mary assures she will help and go on the journey with him. He says she can't do that because no one would take care of the flower shop. However, she said she would leave that task to the android, like last time. Besides, she really likes plants and is interested in the mysterious book. Later he thanks Alfonso for telling everything, and it seems they are planning a journey. That's because they need to find a certain person. Alfonso asks who this person is, and the scene shows that masked man. The person Sung wanted to find was his twin brother, named Pang. Guys, we discovered that our protagonist's twin brother is this crazy doctor. And I don't know if you noticed, but Bluehead told a totally wrong story to make our hero believe what he wanted. Hours later, Mary is outside with Planthead. He asks if she's not going to say goodbye to the guys. She wanted to, but they were no longer there, and they wouldn't have time to look for them to say goodbye. We see Sung at the village exit. The guy was waiting for Alfonso. Alfonso arrives a little late. Our hero gets mad about it, but the guy says he had to get the sword. Unwrapping the bandages, our protagonist points the sword at Alfonso. It was a very big sword, with a strange design. Alfonso says the weapon structure is authentic, and that he can use it freely. After grabbing his hat, he says they need to leave soon and asks how Alfonso knows where his brother is. On the way, Bluehead explains that he put a tracker. It would be hard to explain how these trackers work, but Sung didn't need to know the details. Our protagonist gets mad, asking if he's calling him stupid. He insists that he explain, saying he would be able to understand. Then he shows the equipment and says just to follow the red dot on the screen. At that moment, Plant Head appears. Mary passes by them, ignoring the guys. They don't understand anything. She keeps walking away. From afar, she asks why Novi stayed behind. Then Plant Head runs to her. They even wonder why she was walking in the middle of the desert. At night, they end up gathering and make a campfire. Plant Head apologizes to Sung for not saying goodbye to him in the village. Mary seems a little upset and says Novi shouldn't worry about that. Sung tells the girl what she was thinking, going out alone in the desert. She says that's none of his business, and that she won't be trouble because she's traveling alone with Novi. Besides, her goal is to find answers from that book. Alfonso says he knows she can handle herself, but the desert is dangerous. In the middle of the food, he takes out a cactus and jokes that he put it in the pot. Alfonso watches them joke about it. He even asks if they have eaten that poisonous cactus. After they say yes, he thinks that's why his power didn't work on Sung. Since Mary also ate it, her powers didn't work either. Now knowing that, he won't try to use his powers on them anymore. Our hero appears and they comment that they are not able to sleep. He thanks Bluehead for telling the whole truth. Besides, he pretended not to know him just to protect him. When he recovered his memory, he answered all his questions. Even with the old memories back, he doesn't feel like before. He said he intends never to go back to his old self. He would like to apologize to everyone he hurt, if he had the chance. Now he considers Alfonso his friend. He even says it's kind of embarrassing to say that out loud. Alfonso thanks him. When saying goodbye, Sung tells him to sleep and rest, because tomorrow will be a long day. But we see that Alfonso looked angry, which makes us theorize whether he is an ally or an enemy. The scene returns to Pang, that crazy doctor. He is trapped in a room and asks someone on the television if it was him who imprisoned him. The TV transmission is failing. He wonders who those people are. It seemed like the person on the transmission was trying to say something. Back to the journey, she was very excited. She runs as if it were a trip to an amusement park. Soon after she stops, she asks Plant Head to come to her. They found a plant in the middle of the desert and ask him to check if it's in the encyclopedia. Right after he eats that plant, she gets a mischievous look, telling him to chew fast to see which power he will gain. Time passes and they keep walking. They arrive at the ruins of a city. They had been walking for hours, so Mary suggests resting a bit. They had been walking a long time, and she was tired. She even says they could stop to play some game, but Sung says they are not there to play. They couldn't camp anywhere, and Alfonso tries to explain this to her. That desertification area was where humans were concentrated, but it wasn't very safe. Then there was the jungle zone, where monsters live after the war ended, and the place no one dares to step is the inhospitable land, full of radiation. That was the world map currently. The desert in the north, separated by the jungle zone, and below the ruins of the war. The girl asks how Alfonso knows all that, and he gives a little excuse saying he knows a lot of people. Sung tells them to hurry because they were walking very slowly. Anyway, they didn't need to worry so much about giant monsters, because they only lived in the forest. But at that moment, they get scared. There was a gigantic monster in front of them. The creature was colossal, and Mary asks if it's normal to find that in the desert. Alfonso shouts no, that it's very rare. They even think the creature is herbivorous, and for that reason, they are not in danger. Sung thinks it's better to wait for the creature to pass to continue the journey. But each step of the creature caused an earthquake. At that moment, they realized that if they were stepped on by it, they would surely die. The giant monster starts to take the next step. They realize they would be crushed. The creature's paw comes down on them. Novi unwraps the bandages. A large amount of leaves appears, unexpectedly. Mary tries to protect herself. When she looks up, she sees a barrier, plants. It was Novi who did that, saving everyone. He gained a new power. Mary asks when he learned to do that. That ability was incredible and would be very useful. She goes to him and pulls his cheek, saying he's amazing. But there was a problem. They were safe with the creature stepping on the barrier. But Sung wasn't inside. For now, he could only wait for the monster to leave to look for a boy. In fact, our hero was outside fighting the creature. He used his power to try to defeat the monster. He ends up cutting the poor Colossus with his sword. This protagonist had no mercy. After cutting the legs, he goes for the head, thus finishing the monster, which honestly wasn't doing anything wrong. Inside the plant barrier, they hear a noise. Soon after, it seems there is an earthquake. It was the giant dinosaur that had fallen. After undoing the barrier, they couldn't see anything because of the dust. Mary starts coughing and asks what happened. At that moment, she looks into the creature's eyes. Sung tells her not to scream. Everyone stays calm because he is fine. Our hero justifies that he only ended her suffering because she would die of hunger in the desert. But Mary says he couldn't have done that. The scene returns to Pang trapped in that room with a television. He tries to talk to the person on the broadcast. However, the signal is weak and they cannot understand each other. They even get a little irritated. The doctor stands up angry, asking if this is a joke. The broadcast keeps failing. When it stabilizes, who appears on the screen is a lion. The doctor is startled. The lion apologizes for the connection problems. He asks how the doctor is. He says it's been a long time since he saw Pang. The lion is on top of a building. He heard that Pang went crazy and wants to know what he plans by collecting all those abilities. Besides, he visited the salamander chief. At that moment, another guy appears calling for His Majesty. He says something happened. His Majesty seems to know what it is about, but he ends up slipping and falling in the sand. The goat goes there to see if the lion is okay. He also tells His Majesty it's not safe to stay up there. Next, he tells the goat to relax because the security team is in the control room. But the urgency is because this time people appeared in the city, 4 of them. We'll stop here. Don't forget to leave a comment for the continuation. Thanks and see you next time.